Embracing an institution in EU4 can be expensive. You have to pay 2.5 ducats per real development for each province that doesn't have the institution in question, and the minimum cost is always 1 ducat. So, in the worst way possible, to answer the question in the video, no, it can't ever be free. You always have to pay at least 1 ducat. To clarify a term I used earlier, real development, for those out of the loop, it is the development of a province multiplied by the economy. So, for example, a 30 development province with 0 autonomy has 30 real development, and hence will set you back 75 ducats when you go to embrace. Meanwhile, a 20 developed province at 50 autonomy would only have 10 real development and hence cost you just 25 ducats. So, when you're a small country, that price isn't that bad, but when you get big, it really starts to add up. So, can we get to minus 100% institution embracement cost permanently? Well, yes, but also no. See, every year past 1444, we increase the cost of the institution embracement by 0.5% per year. So unfortunately, the game just kind of out-modifies tax us, as by 1750, the earliest possible time to embrace the last institution, we'll be looking at 153% plus institution embracement cost. And that's not something we can beat, especially given the base plus 100% cost, meaning we're looking at plus 153% overall. I mean, naturally we can also achieve this by having the institution present in every province, or by increasing the autonomy in every single province that doesn't have the institution to 100. But that I'm going to consider cheating. So I'm going to say that we need to get to the 1 ducat cost while the institution is not present in every single province, and every single province when the institution is not present is above 100 development, or lower than 100 development for this case. So regardless of that noble goal, we can still achieve a pretty reasonable amount of institution development cost reduction. Maybe even enough to squeeze an early institution in for free. So let's go for it regardless and save ourselves a bunch of money. Disclaimers, we're going to be using both permanent and temporary modifiers today, and don't worry, they will be displayed separately. Otherwise, in terms of disclaimers, that's pretty much it. So, the usuals. Ironman mode compatible, achievement compatible, standard setup, so no custom nations. Let's go! Now today, for the first time in a while, we have both counters, both temporary and permanent reduction. It's been a while since we had both counters on screen, so feel free to celebrate this achievement by interacting with both the counters available to you as well, namely the like counter as well as the sub counter, if you haven't already. But with that self-shitting out of the way, let's begin. Unfortunately today, we begin in Denmark. I'm sorry, it has to be done. See, the reason we're in Denmark is for one event and one event only. The event in question is event Flavor Denmark 3285, and it's going to pop up anywhere between 1517 and 1550. We actually want it to pop up as late as humanly possible. What do I mean by that? Well, we're going to want to time it for around 1560. So we're going to be realistically hoping to get it by around 1545. Why? Well, we're going to be revealing that later in the video. But the requirements are just be Denmark, and the year needs to be between 1517 and 1550. So if you're getting it by 1545, that'll be great. If you're getting it earlier than that, just bird until you get it at the correct time. This is the entire reason we're actually as Denmark, is for this one event here. We have the option to either rely on the Royal Council, which will give us some gun reform progress, a stab, and some prestige and make our nobility and clergy happy, but we can also rule the support of the bourgeoisie. This will also provide us with gun reform progress, but until the death of our ruler, which we're going to need to keep alive until necessary, we're going to be getting some national unrest increases, but more importantly, we're also going to gain institution embracement cost reduction, which is quite nice to get. So yeah, there we go. We're going to begin our counter with temporarily minus 10% institution embracement cost. Great start. Now let's talk formables, because the next thing we need to do is actually head over to Georgia. See, Georgia in the latest DLC got some new missions, and a quite expensive mission tree at that. The nice thing about this mission tree, of course, is access to one of our new fancy missions, namely the Patriarch of all of Georgia. We need to have the icon of John of Christmas up and active, and if we do, we're going to get institution embracement cost minus 10% for the next 20 years. Thankfully, this can be timed at any point you want, so just time it until you're around 1540 in the optimal case, since we'll be waiting around for some other things. There's a lot of setup we'll need to be due by 1540, so it's not like you're sitting around for this point, but, you know, it's something to bear in mind. I'd recommend popping this around 1545, and again, I'll reveal why later, so they can have it by 1560 pretty consistently. Next, we need to head over to India and form Rajasthan. Now, the thing is with Rajasthan is that it changes our tag group to Indian and has a lot of other negative side effects, but the good thing is it does give us access to the Rajasthani missions. Another country that also has access to the Rajasthani missions is, well, Malwa, and we're here for Malwa for one mission and one mission only, court education. For 20 years, we're going to pick up another minus 25 institution embracement cost, and again, you want to be popping this around 1545. Fun fact, in terms of temporary modifiers, that's actually it. Everything else we're going to be getting is going to be permanent, or at least able to be maintained permanently. So, congrats. These are the 3 things we're picking up on 1 event and 2 missions that are going to be permanent. Everything else is either going to be an incompatible end tag, with the end tag that we're going for right away after this, or it's going to just not be something we have access to. Namely, again, due to end tag compatibility issues. But before we head over to our actual end tag, we need to go and pick up the Porcelain Tower of Nanjing. Quite a difficult task, but then we also need to accept the local Chinese culture there. And when we do that and get it to level 3, we're going to get minus 15 institution embracement cost, which is quite nice. And it's also going to be our first permanent reduction of the run. The other thing that we also need is going to be the Hungarian Library, for another minus 10% institution embracement cost at level 3. So make sure you go ahead and grab that. Furthermore, make sure you get your prestige to 100 and keep it there for another minus 10% reduction from your prestige. As you can see, it gives you institution embracement cost minus 10% here. And I've tagged into the Ming, and as you can see, just being the Great Power, which we'll need to be, become a Great Power, we're going to get a further minus 10% reduction to our institution embracement cost. Finally, we need to go ahead and form Russia. And this is where the relative fun begins, because there's 2 things we need to do as Russia. So first of all, as Russia, we're going to get access to the Tsardom mechanic, which is also going to give us access to Russian modernization. This is going to be very important. Make sure you don't have the Manchester war system enabled at this point, which if you're forming it, you won't, but just don't pick it up. And basically make sure you have no privileges given out. You need to get that modernization to 100, like your life depends on it, because to some weird extent it does. Now, you can form Russia by admin tech 10, and since we're looking at a 1545 date for our formables, we have quite a decent margin to get our modernization. 2 things in terms of getting modernization is find someone ahead of time in you. That's usually going to be some German AI that takes a tech ahead of time, or usually England or France or someone like Poland is a good one to take a look at. Then go to covert actions and build spy network. Then you can be able to spend 30 of it to steal modern ideas. Just going to gain modernization from that, and that's a pretty consistent way of doing it, which is quite nice. You can also spend money to buy modernization, but it gets quite expensive, so, you know, it's a strategy, bear that in mind. It's possible, but yeah, you're going to need to get that modernization to 100. With your modernization at 100, you're going to get access to minus 50 institution embracement cost. In terms of our ideas and policies, we only need 2 things to happen here. First of all, the idea innovative needs to be filled out for minus 10 institution embracement cost, and then you need to go ahead and get yourself naval as well as administrative, so that you can go ahead and get the policy harbor administration, which will give you access to both minus 10% shipbuilding time as well as minus 20 institution embracement cost. Finally, as Russia, you should also flip back to orthodoxy if you haven't already. I mean, as Denmark, you can flip to orthodox and be orthodox during all of these formables, so it's not like you need to prepare this to be ready on the spot. But with orthodoxy, you're going to be able to head and get the icon of, well, the icon of Christmas. This is going to give us access to another minus 20 institution embracement cost. At this point, with all of that said and done, and assuming you followed my policy of popping both the Danish event and getting the Georgian mission and the Malwa mission by around 1545, we're actually going to be able to embrace one institution for free, namely the printing press. Assuming we have it in our provinces, 10% of it by 1560, we will have enough reduction to fully counter the 158% cost that we'll be looking at before things like the Denmark event expire. Unfortunately, that is the only one, as by 1600s, when global trade rolls around, we'll be already hitting the expiry points on the events and missions, well, namely the Danish event. And hence, the next institution will going to be beyond us. So assuming you don't count the 1 ducat cost for the embracement of printing press, we will actually be able to embrace an institution for free. So to answer the question from the start of the video, no, not for free, but it is possible to embrace an institution or get its reduction down to well over 100% and get it for 1 ducat, only for the printing press, if you do this very obscure route. With all that said and done, that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.